Time now for a quick flick through the international press this hour with Alison Sargent again, starting out in Turkey, where papers are reacting to the visit by the American Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson.
This was the highest level visit between the two countries since Donald Trump was elected. You can see that handshake between Tillerson and Erdogan on the front page of the Hurriyet Daily News today. It's a Turkish paper, along with that line that Turkey hopes for new energy in U.S. ties. The paper says that Turkey had been hoping Trump's administration would bring in this new energy on two issues in particular. I know we've talked about them in news. One is that alliance with Kurdish troops in Syria, who Turkey says are part of a terrorist group, and the other is the extradition of the Muslim cleric Fethullah Gulen. But you can see in another Turkish paper, the Daily Sabah, that Tillerson failed to provide clues about either of these issues. The paper says he really beat around the bush during his press conference, and they also give some analysis from a Turkish academic who says the current U.S. administration has come into power but is not completely competent yet, meaning they don't completely reflect their own policies right now. Meanwhile, in the U.S., the Washington Post says that Tillerson was working hard on this visit to appease Turkey. They describe Turkey as a frustrated ally, but the paper reports that there were many flashes of tension during this visit.
Alison, one thing that the Washington Post article doesn't mention was Tillerson's comment that the fate of the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad should or would be decided by the Syrian people themselves.
Yeah, this seemed to signal a possible change in U.S. policy in Syria and in the region as a whole. And there's an editorial in the New York Times today that doesn't mention Tillerson's comments specifically, but is expressing a general worry over changing U.S. policy in the Middle East, and in particular, how that will affect civilians. You remember there was a recent bombing by the U.S. in Mosul that killed some 200 civilians. The New York Times talks about that, and they say that the Trump administration has so far demonstrated a reckless attitude and doesn't seem to have a strategy to promote long-term stability in the region.
Okay, a quick word now, about South Korea, where papers are just about beginning to react to the arrest of their ousted President Park Geun-Hye.
It's the top story of many papers in the region. The Nikkei Asian Review calls it the climax of a political scandal. The paper cites a poll that says that 70% of South Koreans supported her arrest. Meanwhile, one Korean paper is already imagining what her life in jail is going to be like. That's the June Gang. Park is the third South Korean president to be arrested, and the paper points out that they have all been kept in individual cells, which are twice the size of normal cells and have their own toilet. And there's a cartoon in this same paper that also imagines her life in prison. It thinks she may be reunited when she's in jail with a longtime friend. Remember, that's Choi Soon-sil, who has already been arrested in the same nepotism case. We can see her glimpsing the top of Park's head outside of her cell door, and she's saying, "Is that you?"
Very cute. Moving on to the American state of North Carolina, where papers are reacting this Friday to the lift of a controversial law banning transgender people from using the bathroom of their choice.
Yeah, this law has become known as the bathroom ban, and it was passed last year. It caused a big controversy. You might remember that there was a big backlash when it happened against the state of North Carolina, where it's in place. Bruce Springsteen canceled a concert there. There were a lot of other sports organizations that canceled big events, so the state lost a ton of money. And this change is controversial. This ban was really controversial, so you'd think that repealing it would be a good thing. But as you can see in the Daily Beast, many LGBT rights groups say, don't be fooled by this new compromise law. It's not really repealing the ban. Transgender people may no longer technically be required to use the bathroom that corresponds to their birth certificates, but the new law also puts a moratorium on civil rights protections until 2020, which means that the rights of transgender people are not assured, and that in many private establishments they will still be able to discriminate.
And finally, you've got another controversy regarding gender in the US. Let me see if I've got this right. Americans are debating whether or not a man should eat alone with a woman, who's not his wife.
That's exactly the debate. And American Vice President Mike Pence thinks that you absolutely should not do that. He made these comments, and they came out on a profile that was published of him this week, and they caused an uproar. You can see in the Washington Post, Mike Pence doesn't dine alone with other women, and we're all shocked. Now, liberals are shocked by this because they say that his comments support an archaic worldview that says that men have no self-control, so they can't be alone with another woman, and that women are either temptresses or guardians of virtue. But the Washington Post in this article points out that for many Americans with conservative Christian values, it's totally normal to not want to eat alone with a woman who's not your wife. And so the Washington Post says that this backlash just demonstrates once again that many liberals are out of touch and that there's just this big divide in American society.
Okay, Alison Sargent, thank you very much for that spin through the international press this hour.